Hi, fourth grade. Welcome back. Today is new and exciting. We are starting our next little unit. After you guys just learned about the western part of the United States, we're actually now going to learn about the westward expansion and how we got all those big cities and all of those states to be filled with people. So, this is your first lesson on that. Today, we're going to learn about why people began moving to the West, and we'll know we'll be successful when we can explain why colonists began to move westward through the United States. I know it's crazy to think about, but we weren't always filled with people throughout the entire United States. We have lots of vocabulary today. Our first one is colonies. Now, colonies were places where groups of people came to settle that are under control of their home country. And so we actually started with 13 colonies, and they're going to talk about this when they start reading. But that's actually this area right up here that I want you guys to be able to see. So it's truly on the east side, the east upper side was where our first 13 colonies started. The next word is migrated, and it's to move from one region into another. You also hear of migration often with animals, things like birds, they migrate. So that might be where you've heard that before too. But in this case, it's people. The next vocab word is frontier, the far edge of a country where few people live. We have a boundary as our next vocab word, something that makes or marks the edge or a limit. And our last word is independence, freedom from being controlled by someone else. And we've heard that a lot, especially in the United States where we've gained our independence. And we're going to hear more about that today when we read. Just to start off, because we're in a new unit, I am going to have us watch our introduction video. All of this is coming from Scholastic, which we love. So here's our little introduction video. Hopefully, there we go.
Is it true that the United States grew from coast to coast in less than 100 years? Yes, the 13 British colonies that became the first states were all on the east coast of North America, but Americans were moving west even before independence. Leading the way were explorers like Daniel Boone, who blazed trails into Kentucky in 1767. By 1800, the young country stretched as far west as the Mississippi River. Then, 2 years later, the United States bought the Louisiana Territory from France. With this single purchase, the country doubled in size. Texas joined the Union in 1845, and war with Mexico brought California and most of the Southwest under the U.S. flag in 1848. As people moved into the new territories, Native Americans were pushed from their lands. They resisted, but they could not stop the flood of settlers. In 1890, the U.S. government declared the West was settled. The United States had grown into one of the world's largest nations, stretching from sea to shining sea. To find out more about westward expansion, read the book.
And that is exactly what we're going to do, fourth grade. We're going to move back into understanding why and how we moved and got all of these pieces of land. So the very first thing you need is your journal again. So here's my journal. I went ahead and I marked it as Social Studies, April 23rd. And we're going to start off with just 2 true-false questions. So the first question, and it says, everything you're about to read is true except for one of the sentences on this page. So that means you're going to have one answer that's true and one answer that's false. So it says, which one is true? The first one is, the Pony Express was in business for 5 years. And the second one is, between 1841 and 1860, about 300,000 people traveled west on the Oregon Trail. We're going to find the answers in this book, so make sure you guys keep those close for when we finish this unit and we figure out which one was true and which one was false. Chapter 1, A Growing Nation. The United States began as a group of 13 colonies that were ruled by Great Britain. The colonies were located along the East Coast and stretched from New Hampshire in the north to Georgia in the south. They extended as far west as the Appalachian Mountains. Before the late 1700s, few colonists had traveled west of the Appalachians. 100 years later, the United States would extend west to the Pacific Ocean. Down here in our arrow, it says in 1700, there were about 250,000 people living in the colonies. But by 1775, there were 2.5 million people. Such a great expansion of people in 75 years. Up here in our caption, it says in 1775, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania was the largest city in the American colonies. Now, we don't think of Philadelphia as the biggest anymore, but it is still super populated. Crazy to see how things have changed. Expanding colonies. People from Europe migrated to the colonies hoping to find better lives. Some came to escape war or poor living conditions in their homelands. Others wanted to be able to own land or to practice their religions freely. The first frontier. As the number of people living in the colonies grew, cities and towns became crowded. By the mid-1700s, more living and farming space was needed, so people started spreading west toward the Appalachian Mountains. Native Americans lived in this area, but few other people had explored it. The Appalachians became the 13 colonies' first frontier. As the nation grew, its western boundary would be pushed farther and farther out. And you can see on this map here, this is the 13 colonies that they're talking about and where we all began settling in the United States. Now, they're exactly right. The Native Americans were here first, and so truly we began taking land from them as we began moving west. Our caption over here is the number of people who settled in the colonies grew quickly. And we saw that from the stats, just the millions of people that grew in just a short amount of time. This map of the United States in the late 1700s shows the country's western boundary at the Mississippi River. So right in there. A law for the land. Great Britain's government thought it would be hard to rule the colonists if they moved farther west. The British also wanted to prevent expensive wars with Native Americans who would defend their land from colonists moving into the Appalachians. In 1763, Great Britain passed a law called the Proclamation of 1763. The law said that the colonists could not settle beyond the Appalachians. That land would be set aside for Native Americans. The proclamation angered the colonists. It was one of the many reasons why they fought the Revolutionary War against Great Britain, beginning in 1775. In 1776, the colonies announced their independence from Great Britain, becoming the United States of America. By 1783, the United States won the war. After the war, all the land west to the Mississippi River, north to Canada, and south to Florida belonged to the United States. In our captions over here, it says Native Americans sometimes defended their land by attacking people moving into the Appalachian Mountains. And our other caption is the Revolutionary War began in 1775 and ended in 1783. Okay, guys, today your journal question. So really your two journal questions for today. You had your true falses at the beginning, and then you have this journal question. So those are the only two questions for today, but this one's kind of a two-parter. So your journal question is, how did the United States gain their freedom from Great Britain? And two, why did the United States want their independence? So those are your two questions. If I were you, I would pause this video to write this down, just like I did. I wrote the journal question down. So that way, this is all my work for today. How did the United States gain their freedom from Great Britain? Why did the United States want their independence? And I'm going to turn back to the page that helps you answer these questions. So pause here to be able to write your answer, write down your journal question, and go ahead and pause on this page to help you answer the questions for your journal questioning. That's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day.